IW Businessworld. Today we are here at Indian Business Literature Fest, where business meets wisdom. Today we have with us Professor Dhruv Nath, Director, Lead Angels. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So good to have you.
Thank you, Resham.
In your book, you have talked about so much on failures in startups and investing ecosystem. How is it evolving? Also, when it comes to the specific aged time now where we are witnessing the slowdown, how can the businesses in today's age can learn from their failures?
Okay. I think, I'll take an analogy here, Resham. If you want to learn about acting, yes, you will go to Bollywood, you'll probably learn from Shah Rukh Khan or maybe Amitabh Bachchan or one of these giants. But there is also the guy who came from the fields of Punjab, right? Tried his luck, couldn't succeed in spite of spending maybe 2-3 years, got frustrated, went back. Now, when you are trying to learn about acting, it's very, very important to talk to this guy as well. Because you will learn what mistakes he made,
That's right.
you will learn why they did not succeed, and therefore you will figure out what mistakes you should not make in the future. I think any field, and startup is one more field, it's extremely important to learn from failures because then hopefully you don't repeat them, right? And especially if you look at failures of others. Now, the most important thing about failures is nobody talks about them, right? Everybody, brags about, I raised so many $1 billion, $1 million, I have this valuation. Everybody talks about success, Businessworld, Economic Times, everybody. Nobody talks about failures till they are in a bar and they have maybe downed 4 or 5 pegs, because then the failures float out. Now the point is, who hears them? Only the other guy who's sitting across the table, maybe the bartender, right? But the person who's actually creating the startup has no idea what failures X, Y, Z, W, P, G went through. So we realized, I had a co-author in one of the books, so we realized that it's very, very important to make sure that people also learn about failures, because that actually makes these books absolutely unique, because nobody talks about failures. And in fact, a lot of people have come back to me as an author and they've told me, look, we've liked your success stories, but we liked your failures even more because we never saw things like this.
That's right.
I think it's very, very important.
It's so critical to involve and talk about failure so that others can learn from your mistakes too. You talked about building a brand.
And by the way, it is not only failures that we saw, it's also failures in our investment approach. We made mistakes where the startup maybe 2 years later, 3 years later collapsed, and we realized the mistake we made. So I put that down so that even investors figure out, look, this is a mistake we should not make.
You pointed out businesses have to be very critical in terms of building their brands from the baseline. They have to be strong in their principles and fundamentals. When it comes to investment, and when investors go out to evaluate a startup, their plan, their model, what are some of the major things investors are expecting right now from the startups?
So first of all, we have actually created in both the books, right, a framework called Persistent, which maybe we can talk about separately. But I would say the top 3-4 things are, most important thing by far is the founder or the team of founders. Because we have a very strong belief that if you have the right founder and you have a bad business model or an average business model, or you have a crisis, the founder will figure out a way to make it work. Right? On the other hand, if you have a wonderful business model, but a very average team of founders, even a great business model will collapse. And I've seen examples of that. So that's one. A team of founders is extremely important. The other thing we look for is passion. Very important, because you'll always have ups and downs. COVID was down for 2 years. Passion is the only thing that will carry you through. If you're only looking at making money, you'll just give up in maybe 6 months. What we also look for in the business is how big is the market, because otherwise you will stagnate at some stage. What you also look at is how scalable is your business. Market may be large, but can you grow rapidly within this? Otherwise, the other guy will come in and kill you, right? Because he grows faster than you. And then we look at things like entry barriers. So broadly, these are the things we look at.
So if not anybody hampering the growth right now, but you should have a trajectory to grow. There should be a path to profitability, right?
Yes. So there is actually a fairly, it's a slightly long story. You know, when the internet came in, when it started getting used in business, there is a very interesting saying we have: geography has become history. Because before that, the vendor and the customer had to be side by side, right? So if you were based, let's say, in Cochin, your customers would probably be in Kerala. That's it. Definitely not in Kashmir. Definitely not in Delhi. With the internet coming into business, you can be sitting anywhere and you can be serving the entire world. So because of this, the larger companies, they grow bigger and bigger because they can suddenly, go all over the place, and the smaller companies get killed. So investors have started looking at, they said, look, we want growth. You show us growth, you show us dominance, you show us that you are one of the leaders in the market or moving towards leadership, we are very happy to invest in you. Unfortunately, what happened was it became growth at any cost, which means no problem, you're growing by 100%. Oh, your profits are actually growing, your losses are growing by 150%. Don't worry, we'll fund you as long as you're growing. That has taken many, many years to hit investors because today they are realizing these are fictitious businesses. I mean, how can you have a business which is continuously making bigger and bigger losses and saying, hang on here, I have raised 20, whatever, X amount of $1 million.
It's been happening already.
It's been happening. So now things have changed where investors are getting realistic and therefore founders are also getting realistic, and they're realizing it has to be a real company which at some stage has to move towards profitability.
That's right.
And that's what I call path to profitability. So you may not be profitable today, but at some stage you have to show that you're on a path, and that's happening today. You look at companies like Zomato, you look at companies like Paytm, look at Policybazaar, all these listed companies, definitely they are moving towards profitability.
So definitely three things. One is the power team, the passion, the shared mission, and of course the strong growth model towards profitability.
Yes.
This was really informative, but towards your book, how was your writing experience and what stood apart? If
Wonderful.
You want to share some
Wonderful.
stories.
Actually, okay, I think I get a lot of feedback from readers, and I think the feedback I liked most, fortunately, it's all been positive. Except one guy said the paper quality was not good, which is okay. It's not my problem. But Penguin should hear that. I think the one common factor across many people I really liked that was they said, look, when I read this book, I wasn't reading a book. I thought I was talking to you.
That's right.
Now, that's wonderful because that's the way I am. I like talking to people and explaining, and exactly the same thing goes into the book. So it's been I would say it is just putting down on paper what in any case I do. So it just merges.
So good to know. Going forward, how do you look at the startup ecosystem evolving? Also, what would be one key takeaway from your book you think that can make a change there?
Okay, if you look at the ecosystem, I think today India is supposed to be the third largest startup environment. And I don't like the word ecosystem, it's too much jargon. Environment.
Environment.
After the US and China, it could very easily outgrow the US and China for a very simple reason. The US is a developed country, right? Many things which had to happen have happened. Now people are looking at those incremental changes. Yes, there are some major changes as well, but largely incremental. If you look at India, it's predominantly untapped. Look at the villages, and I'll give you another story here. I keep saying the opportunity in India is, yes, it is in India, but more than India, it is in Bharat. So take a simple example. You have urban company, right? Now, urban company gives you services at home, which is plumbing or carpentry or whatever, electrician services and so on. Urban company is reasonably saturated in our metros and similar companies to urban company. Smaller towns, there is a lot of opportunity still. But now go to the village. There is an interesting company which I've personally invested in called Agrix. What does Agrix do? They say the chota, the small marginal farmer in a village, he doesn't need a plumber, he doesn't need a carpenter, right? Why would he need a plumber? He'll probably draw water from the kua, right? He doesn't need a plumber anyway, there's no tap. What does he need? He has a piece of land which is small. He can't afford a tractor, he can't afford a harvesting machine, he can't afford, let's say, a spraying machine for pesticides and so on. He needs these services. So, Agrix has adapted the urban company model to villages. They have kept tractors in specific locations, and this is pure rural. This is western Bihar and eastern UP, pure rural. You can't imagine, sitting in Delhi, you can't imagine how rural it is. And these guys, they say, okay, you want, services where you get your field plowed, no problem. You have an app, apply on the app, or if you want, call us up, we'll send a tractor with a guy who operates it and get it done for you. And you only pay for that 3 hours of tractor usage. So, now look at the opportunity. 50% or possibly more of the country is agricultural.
Huge.
And how many of them are small marginal farmers? So, just this one business model can just transform the country, and there are lots of people doing similar things. So, I think the opportunity is just phenomenal. I think the other thing you asked about is one final takeaway. I would say follow your passion. Don't create a startup because you want to get a valuation of whatever, 100 million or $1 billion. It doesn't make sense. Create a startup because you like what you're doing, you believe in it, you can do it for the rest of your life. I think that's important, and we as investors, by the way, look for people with that kind of passion for what they're doing.
And to add to it, if they can make an impact to the society.
That's even better.
It's lovely. It's a pleasure
great.
to talk to you. Thank you.